Hello. How are you, Kong?
Very good, and very happy to be here.
It's good to have you here. Ellister,
I agree.
we like you,
Very
don't
happy
we?
to be here, and I'm very happy that Kung is here.
Thank you.
Kong from Hong Kong,
Yes.
involved in the arts broadly, but also involved in jazz and jazz festivals.
Yes. I'll say a little bit about my background first. It's like I think I was around 13 or 14 years old, and then I decided music is the only thing I want to do in life. But back then, I was thinking about classical music, so it's like more like Beethoven,
Western classical.
Yeah, Western classical, Beethoven, Brahms, Mahler, and all this. But that's how I started my whole music life, and I'm 62 years old now. I haven't done anything else but music. And I was trained in the States as a composer, again in the Western classical style. But
You were trained in the States?
yeah,
okay.
I studied
Where?
music and composition in United States, and I went back to Hong Kong I think in 1986, and it was because I was kind of frustrated with my own path, with my own development. At that time, I felt that I was writing the kind of music that not reaching anybody, not touching anybody. So I'm thinking, like, what should I do? Because the whole reason for me to write music is to share, to communicate with people. And when you're in a situation, you're writing something like nobody wants to hear your music, and also to the point that why was I writing that type of music? Because I guess back then my whole training was like teaching me how to write this kind of difficult intellectual music that has a very small audience base. Mm-hmm. It's almost like playing an intellectual game. So anyway, I went back to Hong Kong. I think I need to think about it. I need to find my own path again. So I start to develop my own language, my own playing style. I play violin. I play some Asian bamboo woodwinds, and I get into performance rather than just locking myself up in a room and just write music on a piece of paper. I decide to go physical and just go out there and play music with people. And I think gradually I kind of find myself again. So that's how I was doing for a long time as a composer, creator, musician, performer. And by chance, I think it was I remember the year exactly, it was 2009. And this director of an art center in Hong Kong asked me, what would you like to do? What would you like to work with us? And I'm looking at the space outside that art center and said, I would like to use that space to create music. It's like we on the street, right? It's just like, and in Hong Kong, we are not encouraged to do our music on the street outdoor because Hong Kong is very restricted, very kind of rigid in a way. And also at that time, there was a big argument about public space because at that time we found out this huge shopping mall had this outdoor space, and they're using it for like selling to commercial companies to do promotional thing. And then I think there was this busking musician was trying to play in the corner as a busker. They kicked him out. And then people found it's a public area. It didn't really belong to the shopping mall. But then the more we investigate, the more we realize a lot of the public spaces in Hong Kong didn't belong to the people. So when I saw that space outside the Hong Kong Art Center, I said, hey, I want to use that to do concert. It was I started in May 2009. I did a concert there outside Asante for 9 years.
For 9 years.
9 years.
Sure.
Once a month, over 100 concerts. And then in the process, I getting more support, including the support from the government, and expand to also different other districts in Hong Kong to explore this whole idea of public space, what we can do with it. And for me as a musician, I want to do music.
So it came from frustration to inspiration.
Yeah. And then, so I never know much about jazz music because of my background. But then when I was creating the program, like for those what I call street music concerts, and I think jazz is one style. It's a good style to do it on the street or that kind of outdoor environment. Why? Because like in Hong Kong, there are basically three or two predominating style. One is the Western classical music, which get a lot of the government support. And then the second type is like pop, but it's very much a commercial pop. It's like really dominated, controlled by the market. So the indie pop is not really well developed. And jazz is of the three is the least developed type of music. But around that time, there was a group of young musicians coming back from the States, from Europe, after they received their jazz education. Because before that, Hong Kong was like have a very small jazz scene and very much dominated by these 2-3 musicians. And all of a sudden you have like 12, 15 musicians, young musicians coming back. And I start working with them. So it's not intentionally. I want the concert to be just a platform for jazz because I promote all kind of music, traditional music, folk music, pop, rock, whatever, experimental music, everything. But it just all happened. I had this platform. At the same time, you had this group of young jazz musicians coming back and looking for places to perform. Because in Hong Kong, the rent is so expensive. It's very difficult to do like non-commercial live houses. So most live houses will be just like American commercial pop or Hong Kong pop. So it's like the jazz musicians, very hard to find the club, the live house to play music. So at least once a month, I have this like concert series that I can present them. So the rest is history. and then I joined this like a big West Kowloon Cultural District, which is one of the biggest cultural venue project in Asia or in the world. It's like they are planning maybe 10 to 15 performance venues.
Well, like massive
venues, like including museums, and also like at the moment we have this like big traditional Chinese opera house, and then we have this wonderful experimental black box theater, and in the next 2-3 years we open a big dance and theater center, and we're also planning a concert hall. So there may be opera house, there may be like a medium size of theater or theater for musicals. So I joined them 9 years ago, and I'm in charge of the music program. And finally, we have our venue open 5 years ago. The first thing I want to do is I want to do a big jazz festival. So in 2009, I started the Free Space Jazz Festival in West Kowloon Cultural District. And this October with the 5th edition. So I getting more involved into jazz because whatever happened. And for me, there are a few things I want to do. Hong Kong has a relatively underdeveloped jazz scene and have a relatively small jazz audience. But even as my background as a classical or contemporary classical musician, composer, I always see something very special about jazz. It is an important component of the pop culture. At the same time, it's artistic and have all this like amazing potential. So it's really, for me, it's like the best thing other than pop and classical. And I think it's also more contemporary.
I want to shift you slightly away from where you were, because it sounds like you're not just a musician, composer, but an activist taking music to the streets and now in a more controlled, contained environment.
Funny.
And that's not what you did by intention.
I think at one point I decided to call myself a music activist.
Okay.
Because I'm not a political activist. I'm not, because that's not my background, that's not my training, that's not my knowledge. But because I spent all my life in music, I believe in the power of music. I believe in how music can change people. And I believe by promoting good music, you're making a difference. So, yeah.
But the pandemic changed people, and this war in Europe is changing people. Can music reverse some of that insularity that's been taking place?
I think the way I see the pandemic is more than a health issue or the illness issue. What I have observed in the last few years is how different countries using that as an excuse to change the way they control people. That is what I find scary. Because they really use that as an excuse to exercise their control. So it's like a scary rehearsal for me. When you look back, it lasted for like 3 years, let's say. But if you step back further, look at history, 3 years is nothing. We've been affected by events a lot more like worse, and we kind of recover from it. So I think what happened with COVID is that make us think. For example, I mean, we've been taking for granted that performance had to happen physically in a theater. I mean, since Greek's time, the amphitheater, right? Say, for once, after all these thousands of years, we cannot perform in theater. No audience allowed in the theater. I find that's interesting, because that for me is like it really challenged our fundamental approach to performance. This performance needs to be have that kind of physicality. Is it the most powerful thing? Is that only when I perform here, you watch it there? Is that we need that kind of short distance or that kind of direct physical contact to pass the message? That's the thing that made me think.
What would your advice be to us as the World Jazz Network? Because the three of us, I take it, are also music activists, and we have the same dilemma. We see what's happened in the world. We see things getting more right-wing than left-wing, or just things getting more conservative. I think we can agree that governments have used the pandemic as an excuse to do things. But what do we do? What does a World Jazz Network do to shift things the other way?
I think that there are a few things to your question. One is, for me, music's always music. We all believe in the power of music. That wouldn't change. The second thing is like, I'm being kind of pessimistic, that being human, we are always bad, destructive. When you look at history, it's always this like low point, high point, or midpoint. I think, like all three of us, have a very deep belief in music. I mean, we either believe in music in the sense of music represents love, music represents hope, music can comfort us, music can help us to keep on fighting. I think those are the fundamental beliefs. And as long as we all still have that, that's important. Then that's the other thing is about, I say, the World Jazz Network. The main word is network. How we all connect together. Because like that's the only way to do it. I mean, collectively, we have to do it together. I mean, we all know how we can do it just individually. So like, in the last few days, it's the first time I came here. This is a relatively small festival, but I love the intimacy. I love the connection, the relationship among all the participants. I get to meet both of you, and then we are connected. And then that's so meaningful because now we can go home.
So what will you take
Alison and Andre.
And I like, on a closing note, meaningful relationships, I like you too.
I agree. Yes.
What did you get here? What are you taking home? And what could you bring back into the World Jazz Network?
Because the thing is that we are all just a tool, a connector. I mean, we believe in the continuation of a beautiful tradition, let's say jazz, let's say music. And then we are all connecting with our friends, and we go home, and we're always helping the younger generation. That is the networking, the connection is happening. And then, in an idealistic way, maybe can create a better tomorrow, a better future.
I think we're idealists. On that note, Kung, thank you for being idealistic with us.
Thank you.